Thanks for joining me tonight in Easy Watercolour Landscape Tutorial 5 tonight. So what we're going to do tonight is create a simple landscape on the page here. We're going to use some Cobalt Blue. We're going to use probably a mix of Cobalt Blue and light red. We might use this mix of Winsor Blue red shade and light red. And then some burnt umber, some raw umber, and a bit of yellow ochre. We'll see if we use all of those colours. All of the colours and everything that I use will be in the description below. So all we're going to do to get started is just wet the page. So let's just do that. I'm using Archer's 300 GSM paper. I'm just wetting the page at the moment. Not so wet that the whole thing just goes to pot, but and I can get some of those hairs out right now. And then I'm just going to get some of this beautiful Cobalt Blue, and I'm just going to think about just bringing in some cloud formation. So, you know, again, it doesn't really matter, but we could think about, well, the clouds are going to have some tops, and then they might even start to have some bottoms here as we get closer to the horizon. We don't have to be too exact. These paintings will often just paint themselves a bit. And then if you don't really like what you've done, you can just come back in and strengthen some areas if you wanted to. Another thing you can do after you've laid in some colour is think, oh, I want a bit of a sharp edge here of some clouds. So I might want some sharp edges up here of some of these cloud formations here. The nice billowy bits of cloud in some of those areas. As you can see, my hake brush is molting at the moment, so I'm going to get rid of some of these hairs. With the tweezers, I really have to get myself a new hake brush that doesn't keep dropping hairs. Anyway, that's that. Right. So I'm just going to mop up the excess water. And so while it's still wet, what I'm going to do is just start, I'll just use a smaller hake brush, this little 1-inch hake brush. And what I'll do is I'll just start to think about laying in some yellow ochre here, and maybe there's a bit of some trees happening here, you know, in this sort of area here. I'll bring in some raw umber, bring in a bit of burnt umber here. So I'm not trying to be too exact to begin with. Might even bring in a little bit of Cobalt Blue. Again, if I move some pigment here at the moment, because it's still wet, it's not going to create any hard lines. So all I'm going to do now is I'm just going to start to dry it, and as I dry it, I'm going to be grabbing tissues and just lifting out some lights that are still damp. So what you can start to do next, and I'm definitely not an expert at this, is you could start to lift out some lights. If you wanted to think about, oh, there's maybe some light coming through here, it's just got a damp part of the brush here. The brush is just a bit damp, and it means I can just lift out some lights. And again, I've got one here. So this is not a bad little brush for this, because I don't do this style of painting very often. And what you can do is you can, if you think that there's some branches coming out here, you can lift up that pigment from there and then use that out there. So you can lift it up from there and then move it. And you can really do that anywhere with any of these brushes. Well, that was a bit strong. So what you could really be doing here over a fairly long period of time is just, you could start to build up layers. And that's what's lovely about watercolour, is that ability to build up layers. And especially if you're able to be working from a photograph or something, you can really, but the thing to do in between each layer is to then dry it, so you can add another layer to that. Not always keep working on a wet paper. That will end up leading to it not turning out particularly well. So that's what you can start to do. Lift out lights, add some more darks, just lift out some more lights wherever you think that there might be. But this is definitely not an area that I am particularly skilled at. But you can start to see how you could build up some detail of the trees. You could start to work out where your lights are coming from, where your darks and shadows are, and just start to really give some depth to that, to the painting, with lights and darks. And most of the time, that's why photographs are great to work from, because they can really give you that level of detail that you just would struggle to kind of make up on your own. until you've observed a lot of nature. But the thing you probably don't want to do with a photograph is try and stick too much to the detail of what that is, because it can keep you very rigid and stuck. So whereas what you want to be really is to be quite free in the way that you paint your watercolors, so that you can, I could even just think about something off in the distance there, and if I've done that a bit strong, I can fix that in a second. We can just bring that down in here. Just lift that out a little bit. There we go. Maybe still too strong. A bit more out. There we go. Anyway, you get the idea. I'll dry this. So thanks for joining me tonight for Easy Watercolour Landscape tutorial number 5, where we really looked at some clouds, how to do that with Cobalt Blue. We used some tissues to create some hard edges, and then we just started to lay in, some trees here with some yellow ochre and a bit of burnt umber and raw umber, a little bit of Cobalt Blue, a little bit of the mix of the Winsor Blue red shade and light red. And then we just started to lift out some lights and put in some darks, and we could have continued that for a long, long time if we wanted to, okay? But it's just a really good exercise in learning some of those processes and techniques. So thanks for joining me. If you would like to know about future videos, then press the subscribe and the bell button, and otherwise I'll see you next week in the episode tutorial number 6. So that's exciting. Alright, thanks for joining me, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.